as I started to become educated in more films, I wanted to be a director. I wanted to write, and I went to film school. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts, and it was there that I really fell in love with cinematography. And by that point, when I first started school, I wasn't really aware fully of what a cinematographer actually did in terms of what he or she does on set and how they bring their talents to each movie. And once I started becoming educated with that, I really fell in love with it, and from there I focused at NCSA, at the school I went to. They have focused curriculums, and so I focused on cinematography, and for the last 2 years I was a cinematographer at school, and that's all I studied, and that's all I did on set.
How was that school? Because I've read a lot about North Carolina School of the Arts, and I've never spoken to a graduate from there that I know of, and I'm curious. Obviously, that was a wise decision for you to go to that school. And what did they provide you that proved most valuable, do you think?
Actually, the best thing about the school is that everyone is sort of on a level playing field. The school owns all of their own equipment, and so from day one, you are handed a camera, and you are using the lights, and you are using the sound stages that they have on the campus. And so it's a very practical school. And I mean, there's theory as well. You're watching a lot of movies, you're discussing a lot of movies, but from day one, you are on set and you are doing it, and you are making movies. And that's really important, I think, when it comes to having a career outside of school, you know. What I mean when I say that everyone starts with a level playing field is when directors do their thesis films, everyone is given the same budget and the same amount of equipment to use, as opposed to other schools where you're raising your own money. So, you know, 9 times out of 10, someone who raises $50,000 for their short film is going to make a better movie, or at least a better looking movie probably, than the person who raises $2,000. So that's one of the great things about that school, is that, like, you're given a particular budget. Everyone has the same amount of utilities and resources and money, and everyone is making a film based on that. And it's really great to see how everything comes out.
Mm. And you also get to, and this is another question I had about the kind of the discipline of cinematography, because there are some DPs out there that we look at their work and we instantly recognize, yes, that's Roger Deakins' photography, or Robert Richardson, or you know. But at the same time, a big part of that art has to do with being a chameleon and kind of bending your own mindset and tools to satisfy the director's vision. Did that come naturally to you?
I think it didn't come naturally right at first. At school, I was always very stubborn, and I practiced that sort of school of thought of, like, as a DP, you need to have your own style, and you know, whatever movie that you're working on is going to adapt to you and not the other way around. But, like, very quickly you realize that filmmaking is an utmost collaborative process, and the director and the writer, everything that you do comes from them. And so you're absolutely right. Like, you do really need to be a chameleon, and you need to work together to establish a look. And if you work with a different director with each movie that you make, chances are it's gonna have a different look and a different feel. You know, you have people like Chivo, who, you know, over the past couple of years has only worked with a handful of directors, probably even less. You know, maybe 2 or 3 directors. And so a lot of his movies as of late have looked the same and had the same sort of aesthetic and the same sort of feel. You know, all the one takes and everything. But the reason why is because he's working with the same directors, and right. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a collaborative effort, and it all starts with the script, and it all starts with the director, and you have to implement your own style and your own vision and sort of meld it in with what the director wants.
So when you're doing kind of a more intimate or smaller character film like Manson Family Vacation. There's what I'm curious about is your relationship to the actors. Do you interact with them much at all? Do you give them their space? What do they ever come to you with a question or a concern, and how you deal with that? Just the whole dynamic of working with actors as a cinematographer.
Sure. Honestly, it's very dependent on whether or not you're like how much you're interacting with actors is very dependent on each individual set that you're on. Like I've been on sets where the actors preferred to be offset when they're not working, and then they come on, they do blocking, they leave, they come back to rehearsals, and then so there isn't that much interaction unless it's just on a technical level, like we adjusted your mark here, so if you don't mind, or like we're over your right shoulder, so if you don't mind, just make sure you don't lean in too far. However, on something like Manson Family Vacation, it was a very intimate set, and I grew very friendly with them almost immediately, to the point where they weren't afraid to or not afraid, but they felt comfortable to come to me with just about anything, and I felt comfortable coming to them with a lot of things as well. So in particular on this film, we were all, it was such a small crew and a small cast, so we all felt comfortable enough to really interact with each other. But that doesn't necessarily always happen on every set.
Mm-hmm. And what is let's talk about Manson Family Vacation, since this is the latest film. And this project in general fascinates me. Just the subject matter of the project fascinates me. But in terms of when you met with your director on this film, and you plotted out kind of the visual scheme of it, or how you wanted to approach it from a visual standpoint, what were those conversations like with Jay Davis, the director?
Yeah, and also we made this movie so long ago, so forgive me if I need to think about something or but I think the first time I met Jay, it was just kind of like one of these things. Like I was recommended by a friend, a mutual friend, and we met up at this bar and we just talked, and we actually talked a lot about the film that I had just made. Previous to our meeting, it was a movie that was at Sundance called This Is Martin Bonner, and so and it was a very small movie, very small budget, and so we mainly talked about my process on this other film because we were going to have a similar amount of money and a similar schedule, which is very short. We weren't going to have a lot of time, and so we talked a lot about that, and it was basically just getting to know one another, and quickly, I think we both realized that we really wanted to work together. And then the next time that we met, it was with Jay Davis, and then also Jay Duplass, who is an actor in the movie, but also one of the producers. And right off the bat, they had mentioned that they wanted a very sort of loose feel, and they wanted to experiment with improv. And so one of our first creative decisions was to shoot two cameras simultaneously, and not only shooting two cameras, but usually covering, two over the shoulders, looking in opposite directions with both cameras. So if we're shooting Jay and Lyneth talking to one another, each camera is on a close-up of each actor, which is obviously it proves to be very difficult when it comes to lighting. So it's difficult for the cinematographer, but immediately I knew that that was the way to go, especially with all of the improv that they wanted to do. You want to be able to match takes and things like that.
And you don't want to miss any of the spontaneity that's happening as well.
Exactly. You never want to. If something incredible happens, you never want to have to try and recreate that magic in the reverse shot. That's always difficult to do. So two cameras was always for us the way to go. That was one of our first decisions to make.
When you talk about the short schedule, and that's just the nature of the beast in independent filmmaking. I don't think there's a filmmaker alive, even at the upper echelon that doesn't think that they could benefit from more money or more time.
That's true. You always want it, huh?
Yeah, but so I would think that it would be of utmost importance to meet your schedule, to be as practical as possible. So the challenge in that is it a challenge to temper being practical with being as expressive as you can?
Yeah, I think I was actually I was helping out a friend with a feature over the past couple of weeks. I was operating for him and his DP, and we were actually just talking about this the other day. I think the hardest thing for low-budget or no-budget filmmaking is shooting the script and getting every little piece you need to tell the story visually, but still creating and maintaining a specific style. I can't tell you how hard it is to be on set and you don't have any time and people are trying to rush you, but like for good reason. Like you have to work quickly and you have to work efficiently to tell the story as good as possible, but still maintain that style. It is very, very difficult, and you're always walking that tightrope between getting the shots that you want from a style standpoint, but also getting the shots that you need to just tell the story as simply as possible.
Yeah. And also, that's such a great point. And also to have and I guess this happens in the conversations previous to shooting, of course, but also to have the style be of consistency, have it be a consistent style that is expressive but doesn't draw attention away from the film, but it deepens the viewer's investment in it.
It enhances it, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, it's very difficult to maintain that level of style and to keep it consistent, especially our schedule. We just because people had regular jobs and they had to work during the week, we actually worked I think a series of like 7 long weekends, sometimes 3-day weekends, sometimes 4-day weekends, because a lot of us were working normal jobs during the week. Jobs that pay the bills and everything like that. So over 7 weeks, where you have like a 4 or sometimes 5-day break in between those shooting days, it's very difficult to maintain any kind of particular style. Even when you're shooting all the way through, I find it very difficult, especially when there's a lack of time and a lack of money.
When you're shooting for 3 or 4-day weekends and then you have off a few days and then you come back, does it also affect the momentum, kind of the mindset and the momentum of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't see how it really can't. I mean, like every, any time that we came back, let's say we started on a Friday, it was going to be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Whenever we came back from our week off, or like our Monday through Thursday, whenever we came back on Friday, it would always feel like a Monday. It would feel like we were kind of starting all over again, to be honest with you. But you slowly start to get used to that, and quickly the crew, which was very small, but the crew started to like get sort of used to that. And so I think after a couple of weeks, we started to get into the groove where we weren't having those cases of the Mondays anymore. Mm-hmm. It was, but it was tough, but we were able to do it.
What was particularly fascinating just about for you as an artist about the material of Manson Family Vacation?
I've always been I'm very fascinated with Manson in general, and I read Helter Skelter a long time ago, and I actually reread it to prepare for the movie, and I think it's just very fascinating. But what's really fascinating about the script is that sure it's about Manson, and it's about the family, and it's about a sort of disturbed young man who sort of is looking for the family, but at the heart of the story, what really made me want to do it was at the heart of the story, despite all of the Manson things going on in the story, it's really at its heart about just 2 brothers who rekindle this love for one another, and through that love they realize acceptance, and they accept one another for who they are, but it just happens to also have be about the Manson murders and the family and when one of the brothers who happens to be quite obsessed with it. And it's a little disturbing, but at the same time, it's like at its heart, it's just about these two people who have lost this love for one another and who try and rekindle it. And I thought that was really great.
It's such an incredible kind of contrast and confluence of subplots because, but in a way it makes sense because you essentially have two dysfunctional families. I mean, the Manson family is obviously the most dysfunctional family in history.
Yeah.
But by going on that kind of exploration through that history of the family, they come to terms with one another. In a way, I was very surprised by it. Was it tonally? Tell me about striking just the right tone, because those are two kind of different wavelengths. One would think those two plots.
Of course, and I mean, in terms of the tone, I think a lot of that should be credited to Jay Davis and the actors, who did a phenomenal job of always sort of walking that tightrope tonally. And my crew and I were just there to sort of witness it and almost document it. In terms of our style, we were handheld, we were very run and gun. So really, they went off and did their thing, and then it was my job to just sort of document them doing that. And that's one of the great things about improv, is that they were able to do different takes that tonally were very different. And then what's great about doing different takes like that is that you can figure it out later, and you can use different takes to match whatever tone. Just in case the tone did change in editing, you have all of these possibilities with all of these different takes and all the different improv that's going on. But tonally, I think, a lot of that has to do with just the actors really, really walking that tightrope really, really well, and always maintaining that underlying subtext of just, this is about their love for one another. And I feel like in every frame you really get a sense of that.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad that you told me that you had a fascination with Manson and that whole story, because I was afraid that this was the part of the interview where I'd come across as a major weirdo. And maybe I still will. But I actually live in Florida, but I go up to L.A. often. And the last trip I made to L.A., I almost feel ashamed to say it, but I took like a death tour, a Hollywood death tour. And it was the most fascinating, just kind of an infectious fascination. And when my girlfriend and I, we stopped by several of the Manson sites, and the most ominous spot that we passed was the La Bianca house. There was something about that. The sun was setting, and we drove past it, and you felt the chill. What was the experience like, kind of revisiting these landmarks in that Manson history for you?
I mean, honestly, I didn't get the chills as much as I would have had I probably gone there on my own, not making the movie. I mean,
right.
Honestly, I'm so goddamn busy on set that I never, and I should have, I really should have just taken a step back and just realized what we were doing and really emotionally, just taking that in. But to be honest with you, I really didn't have a lot of time to really think about it. Unfortunately, usually I'm running around too much trying to get the shot set up or something like that. But I do know that I think it was a really emotional journey for all of us, the crew and Jay Davis and the actors, and I think. I think revisiting all of these places and having these feelings, I think it really works for the story.
You just shot a film in Germany, didn't you?
I did, yes.
What
it was my first time shooting anything in overseas.
So how much time did you spend in Germany prior to shooting?
The film is called Morris from America, and we shot in Berlin and Heidelberg, and we had about 6 weeks of prep for the film, and I came about 1 week earlier than prep started. So I was in Germany for about 7 weeks, and then we had a 6-week shoot schedule, 5-day weeks, and so I was in Germany for about 3 months total.
Because had you been to Germany before that, or no?
No, I'd never been to Germany before that, and I didn't know the language. I still don't know the language. Luckily, my crew spoke very good English, and very seldom was there ever a sort of communication breakdown. Nothing was really lost in translation, so it was really good.
Well, and as a DP, whether it be Germany or any location you go to is probably at first unfamiliar to you, unless you shoot it in places that you frequent every day. But how important is just getting a sense of environment and ambiance and space when you go to a location?
Of course. The movie in Germany, Morris from America, this was actually the first film that we had the money to have like a significant amount of prep. And I learned so much about how important prep is. I'm still relatively young in my career, and so like this was the first time where I was like, wow, this is what prep should actually be like. This is great because like you can look at locations several times, and you can go first with the director and talk through the shots, then you go back with the gaffer and you can talk about the lighting, and then through all of that you can get this sense of what you want the space to feel like even before you record anything. And prep is so important, and I'm so glad that I had the time to do it, to like mainly just to look at locations. On Manson, we didn't have a very big prep time, and so I saw the locations once. I saw every location once for maybe a couple minutes, and then we had to move on. And so, yeah, it's really, really important in prep to get a great sense of the spaces that you're going to be using.
And my last question for you, this is always the last question I ask when I talk to cinematographers, is if you had to teach a class on cinematography and you had to give 3 or 4 or 5 examples of certain scenes that illustrate different kind of lessons that you wanted to teach, what do you think you'd pull from?
Wow. You mean other examples of people's work that I would pull from? Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. Wow. Okay. I think that I would honestly. I think shot selection and making sure that shots are going to cut together well is something that is often overlooked, especially with younger cinematographers or students. They think that a lot of people think that a DP's job is just to make shots look good, but you also have to make sure. And even though obviously you're not an editor, but the editor's job is to put together the things that you've shot. So as a DP, not only do you need to make things look as good as possible, but also you need to make sure that those shots cut together well. And so one of the themes I would talk about is shot selection. And one of my favorite DPs currently, his name is Robert Elswit. He shot a lot of P.T. Anderson movies. However, he shot the last 2 Mission Impossible movies. He shot that action movie called Salt with Angelina Jolie. But like if you watch those, obviously his work with P.T. Anderson is amazing. But if you watch those action movies that he shot, there isn't one scene where you are geographically confused as to where anyone is, or who's punching who, or who's shooting who, or how far away they are from one another. That is such an overlooked aspect of cinematography, of just like allowing people to not be confused in particularly in action movies, to allow the audience not to be confused where anyone is, and to make sure that every shot cuts together to make as much sense as possible. And you know what? And honestly,
I'm so glad you said that, actually, because we talk so much about this very phenomenon on our show. Because if you think of a director like Spielberg, in his collaborations with Alan Davi and the various DPs that he's worked with over the years, every action sequence in a Spielberg film is so so cleanly and imaginatively done. You know where everyone is. You never lose focus. And there's been this phenomenon in action filmmaking where you can't tell what the heck is going on, and it almost feels like they're covering up poor execution in the editing room because
absolutely.
It's cut all to hell. Yeah.
Exactly. And I won't name any names, but I see that all the time. Even in like the movies that have the biggest budget, I'm literally watching this movie and I'm like, I literally have no idea what's going on right now.
Right.
Like who's punching who's shooting who, and I think it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that, like, I think a lot of action movies are afraid of wide shots, and I think it's what you were talking about, where you're covering up certain things that aren't working, and so you just want to cut from close up to close up to close up to close up. But it's like don't be afraid to have like an over the shoulder of somebody shooting somebody, or a wider shot that has multiple elements in it to let an audience member know where what the hell's going on.